Always win.
Economic war. That's something, that's a term you just used. It's something I've talked about at this table, all the different, tactics coming into play against Iran from an economic standpoint. You use the term, if you can devalue the Rial. Is the United States doing something proactive to devalue the Rial today?
Oh, I think the reality is that whenever you talk about sanctions that are punitive on a nation's economy, you're having an effect upon its currency.
Indirect. Are we doing anything directly?
Well,
are we printing Rials and flooding the market?
That's actually my question.
No.
Is it sanctions, or is it bad? I mean, it probably is a combination, but also isn't it the government's policies in Iran?
It is. It is a combination of actually a couple things. I think you're seeing sanctions coming home to roost and truly having an impact. Iran was at one point the top 3 oil exporter in the world. Now it's in the bottom 3. In fact, because Iraq and Libya have come back online, there's greater oil supply. You see the bad policies of Ahmadinejad, the ending of subsidies in Iran, bad economic policy, and you're seeing NGO pressure. Even our group has successfully driven out hundreds of businesses out of Iran, and you're seeing concern about the devaluation of that currency. Shopkeepers, shop owners, businessmen are no longer trust that currency, and they're fleeing to dollars, gold, and otherwise. But the best measure of whether or not economic measures against a country are working is really the effect on the currency.
Ahmadinejad, oh, sorry.
Just while we're on currency, how do you avoid a situation like Zimbabwe, for example, where the currency could not be more devalued, and yet Mugabe is still there? I mean, how do you meet those economic sanctions with political ramifications?
I see you're quite educated, because obviously Zimbabwe is famous for the highest hyperinflation rate in history, actually, and the Mugabe regime continues to be successful. Look, sanctions have worked fewer times than they have failed in the course of history. I personally have the belief that if you have an economy that is wholly dependent upon exports, like oil exports, a very restive minority population, a population that is very educated and pro-Western, that economic pressure could, just maybe, result in regime change. But I can't look any of you in the eye and say economic pressure alone will stop Iran from getting a nuclear weapon. A good policy is going to keep the military option on the table. It's going to keep diplomacy option on the table, and also make sure that you have a robust special operations command that's engaging in things like computer viruses and God forbid, accidents that befall Iran's nuclear scientists.
So, Mark, can I ask you, we just had a very well-known libertarian on the show, and I'm not sure if he makes this argument, but a lot of libertarians do, that sanctions not only can fail, they can actually drive people closer to their leadership and rally around their leadership and create enmity towards the entities that are creating the problem within their country. Is there a danger that the Iranian citizenry could actually become more anti-West?
No, I mean, I think it's a fair question. It depends on where the sanctions are in the eye of the beholder in the country into which they're applied. I do not believe that the Iranian people believe that their economic problems are the result of me, the United States, or the European Union sanctioning an illicit regime for pursuing nuclear weapons, sponsoring terrorism, or otherwise. They hold Ahmadinejad responsible. They hold the Ayatollah responsible. And remember, Iran has a 42% minority population of Azeris, Tajiks, Baluchis, who are very much subject to the repression of a dominant Shia majority. So I don't believe that the Iranian people hold us responsible.
I want to press you on this, though, because I know that in North Korea, they were concerned about a growing middle class gaining wealth from the black market. And what did the regime do? They devalued the currency. That was what they wanted. That actually, by keeping everyone else poor, it kept the people in power relatively more powerful. So, in fact, by the currency being devalued, doesn't this actually, like, to Amy's point?
There's actually a counter-argument that's being levied right now in Iran, which is that they're devaluing the currency to pay off their own debts. Right. So it's not necessarily, it's not warfare against, yes, it's government policy. Of course, the government denies that. And Ahmadinejad says that this is just no big deal. He recently released a statement in response to all of this, saying that everyone is aware that foreign trade and commerce don't have a very high share in the Iranian economy, but the figures are being used in a psychological war for greater effect on the markets. The number of U.S. dollars being exchanged is not that big. Now, certainly he's not an impartial observer of this, and he has his own reasons for propagating that line, but how big, in your estimation, is what we're seeing right now? I mean, is this the opening to possibly a replay of, I know it's not political in nature, it's not a stolen election from Mousavi, but is this a replay possibly of an opening where we could see real tumult in the streets, where they got to bring out the besieged to get everybody clubbed to get them back in line?
Yes. Here's the reason why. If you're at 70% inflation and increasing on a year-to-year basis, an inflection point, God forbid the next Neda Aga Sultan, the young lady that was tragically killed by the Basij in the Green Revolution in 2009, could be that moment, the tipping point where the people again pour into the streets and potentially topple that government. As to North Korea is a closed society. There was a sanction against a bank called Banco Delta Asia, $25 million worth of sanctions. That was crippling the Kim Jong-il regime because he couldn't pay off his generals. A different story in a different circumstance, a closed society. But you know what? Sanctions can have an effect in this very interconnected world. And the Iranian people are a trading people. They're a pro-Western people. They want to be part of a vibrant global economy. And I think that they are chafing under this illicit regime right now.